Well, good evening. Good evening, everybody. It's great. It's great to see you. Hey, I was just curious. How many of you said on your way in? How many of you said good morning? Just out of curiosity. All right. That's my contribution to the last for the night. I'm going to turn it over to the professional, Chad Sheehan, and I'm looking forward to just listening to him over the next hour. But before we do that, could we just bow our heads and pray, and then we'll turn it over to Chad. Father, we thank you for this evening, and we thank you for the gift of laughter and joy. And Father, may we just have a great evening together, and we thank you for this time, and we just, Father, be with Chad as he leads us through this next hour. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.
I can't believe you guys all came back. It's your own fault now. So, welcome. It is good to have you guys back. I know not all the snowbirds are back yet, but like I said this morning, my parents went to this church since 2012, and my favorite service was the 9 o'clock blue hair service. And before you get all, I was a barber, and I understand the bluing shampoo makes your white hair pretty. Except some of you cool grandmas, I don't see any today, but last time I was here, some of you cool grandmas, you just dove right in and dyed it blue or red or whatever. I love that. We had some friends come last year to the 9 o'clock service, and we were sitting there, and they kept looking around. I said, "What are you guys looking at? Do you realize that we are the youngest people by 2 decades?" And I said, "That is not true." And I looked around, and I couldn't prove them wrong. And they don't appreciate old people like I do, just to let you know. And so they just kept, on the way out, "We see that you have a nursery." I bet you I had to listen to that question 30 times. Why does a church with old people have a nursery? I said, the changing tables are bigger. You know? So, and I won't even tell you what else I made up about that. But I just turned 50, and I'm telling you, I am only 5 years away from being able to live in some of your guys' community. And I can't wait, because you guys are gullible. Man, you believe everything. How many of you use dryer sheets in your house or your camper to keep the mice away? I knew it. It spreads like wildfire. So my parents have a fifth wheel back on some property in Wyoming. They went to summarize it. They had so many dryer sheets in there, there should not have been a mouse within 100 miles. I know the Wyoming mice are no different than your kind of mice. I'm telling you, they used them as a picnic blanket. They did. There was turds and wrappers everywhere. So if you've been buying that, just keep it up. You know, "Oh, John told me it must be true." I can't wait. I'm going to make stuff up just to see how fast it spreads from community to community. So as you guys can tell, I haven't been up here 5 minutes, and you can imagine I got a lot of spankings as a kid. My mom will tell you that I got more spankings than the other 3 siblings combined. My dad could whip his belt off in seconds, sometimes before the naughty even happened. And in our house, he was known as the fastest belt in the West. One thing I prayed for as a kid, Lord, please allow the friction of that belt going through those belt loops to start him on fire. I thought if I did something wrong and he whipped that belt off, he'd start smoldering and then pretty soon full on flames. And I could stop, drop, and roll him. I could slam him to the ground. I could stomp that fire out. When I was done, I could grab his crispy little head in my hands. I could gaze into his eyes and say, Dad, I know you don't understand this right now, but that hurt me more than it hurt you. The kids hear that stuff now anymore. I don't think they probably do. And I never lied to my kids when it came to that. It never hurt me more than it hurt them. And my dad really didn't say that, but my mom, she would say, I wish you kids wouldn't do this naughty stuff. I hate to have to do that to you. So she would tell us it hurt her more than it hurt us. And sometimes she was right. But my mom would wash our mouth out with soap and then feel guilty an hour later and make me a milkshake. I had to decide every day how bad I wanted a milkshake. I'm telling you, if I wasn't careful, I could have cussed my way right into diabetes. And I'm telling you, my jokes aren't going to get any better than that one right there. Cuss my way. If you ever have anybody else here on stage that talks about cussing their way to diabetes, you let me know. I'll quit. But kids nowadays, man, they are entertained, aren't you guys? I mean, phones, shiny things. When I was a kid, I think you old guys are getting kind of messed out of some celebrity status. When I was a little kid, there was always one of you guys that was at every event we were at that could wiggle your ears. Did you have that? I mean, we'd be like grabbing our friends, like, come over here, you got to see Henry, man. He can flap those things like Dumbo. You know, we'd run up to him. He was like the one. We'd practice the rest of the day. Yeah, now you old guys have to learn like a TikTok dance and then hope you don't break a hip. But we entertained ourselves a lot. In our high school, there was those drop ceilings that had the ceiling tile about 10 feet in the air. And we used to do things like see if you can get a pencil to stick in the ceiling. You know, and it was like, man, that's the kind of entertainment. And I practice all the time. But I'm married to a gal that wouldn't dare do something like that. And you'll be thankful because we played disc golf a while back with our family and nobody was safe. She hit me standing behind her because she doesn't know when to release. And I can imagine if she would have rebelled a little bit and she would have been a pencil thrower, she would have, like you'd be walking down the hallway and say, seeing all these kids with eye patches on. Dawn get you? Yep, she did. And don't get me started on spit wads. Oh, man. You got a really good juicy one going. You hit your buddy in the temple or the eyeball just right, you could knock him out of his chair. I was in detention for spitting a spit wad, and I got to thinking if I could get a spit wad to stick to the chalkboard during detention, that's some bragging rights right there. I was a slow learner. So I put that paper in my mouth. I got her all ready. I put that straw up to my mouth, and I let her fly. You know, the cool thing about back then is there weren't cameras like there are today. They're everywhere. But, you know, they didn't need cameras back then because the teachers saw everything. Well, I let her fly, and Mrs. Ward, the detention teacher, says, Chad, what are you doing? And I said, Kimmy did it. There was only 2 of us in the detention. And she says, you're an idiot. That's what the teachers could call you idiots back then. She says, you're an idiot. That's my daughter. And she's waiting for me to be done with you so we can go home. She looked a little bit too much like a goody two-shoe to be in detention. And that's when I had to learn to start reading the room. Like, I can tell some of you are still upset about me calling you blue hairs and old people. My mom, she says I'm not an old person. I'm like, ask anybody in their 20s or 30s. And she says, I don't care what they say. I'm not old. I'm on the upper end of middle-aged. You spin that however you want. And some of you are going to use that. I'm not old. I'm on the upper end of middle age. You better write it down because you're going to forget by the end of this thing. So as you can tell, something is wrong with me, and I've embraced it. I'm okay with it. And I've also had a really poor memory my whole life. My wife's had a good memory, and now that we're getting older, she's starting to misplace it a little bit more, and she misses it. She's like, I hate that I can't remember. I'm like, welcome to the club. It's not bothering me a bit. When I was a kid, I could be on the playground with my friends, and I could be telling them a story. I mean, a good story. Have them on the ropes of anticipation, sneeze, and forget what I was talking about. They would say, you're an idiot. You and Billy were down by the river, and they'd get me back on track. Well, now the nice thing is my friends' minds are finally catching up with my mind, and now when I sneeze, none of us remember what I was talking about. Another thing about getting older, now when I sneeze, sometimes I didn't realize I needed to fart. You ever do that? Oops, a daisies, you know? I'm not looking forward to that day. It's like, oops, daisies, I'll be back. But I know it's coming. I know it's coming. So I messed this up at a show not too long ago. And I says, now that my friends' minds are finally catching up with my mind, now when I fart, nobody remembers what we were talking about. You don't recover from that. I'm telling you, right now, those people forever are going to think that my farts cause memory loss. And I was bummed. I was super tore up about this. I was at this church and I messed it up and I'm waiting. Nobody's coming up to me. I'm like, oh, I'm really messed this up. Well, 2 kids came up to me and I'm like, finally, somebody's going to come say something. They go, do you know where the drinking fountain is? Were you kids even at this show? It's down the hallway. But I was tore up. And my brother went to that show. He looks a lot like me. Like, we look a lot alike. And I was telling him the next day, I said, maybe I should get out of this game. I said, I bombed. And he starts laughing. I said, nobody came over to me. He says, oh, man. He said, all kinds of people. I saw you standing over there. They came up to me. I just kept telling them, hey, thanks for coming. Drive home. That's what kind of family does for you. And before I forget that, I need to do a disclaimer. I sent some videos to my family a while back, and I just wanted some feedback. And about 20 minutes later, my mom calls, and she says, so you were arrested? And I said, no, Mom, I wasn't arrested. She goes, so you just stand up there and lie? I go, it's part of comedy, and I'm okay with lying on the stage, Mom. And I said, sometimes I'm okay with lying if it's just for me. So she doesn't like that at all. But like I was telling you guys this morning, there's a bruise on my leg. I showed some of you, it looks like a birthmark. So I end up getting sick of people arguing with me like I don't remember what happened. So I was at my grandma's house last winter, and that bruise, that my grandma goes, what happened to your leg? And I said, it's a birthmark. And like I said, my grandma was okay with that. And my aunt, so I said, what? And she says, that's not a birthmark on your leg. And she told me, most of you heard this, some of you haven't, but she says, I can't believe you would lie about that. She says, oh, that is not a birthmark. And I said, it's a birthmark. I don't remember seeing that when you were a kid. I says, well, can you trust your memory at your age? And so then she tells my mom on her way back over their house, and my mom catches me. I can't believe you lied to them. And like I said, sometimes I play dumb just because I like to hear my mom repeat stuff. And she's like, I said, what? I can't believe you're lying to your aunt and your grandma about that being a birthmark on your leg. I said, Mom, it is a birthmark. This is when I started seeing steam come out of my mom's ears. And she's like, I gave birth to you. I'm telling you it's not a birthmark. And she goes on, uses my middle name. I says, can you really trust your memory at that age? Now, I shouldn't be like that to my mom, but I'm telling you, it's such low-hanging fruit. I just have to do that. She got so mad that she left, and I was, to be honest with you, I was hoping that it was going to lead to a milkshake. But it didn't. The older I get, I'm getting to where I can't see. Man, I was getting ready the other day in the mirror, and the light hit my face just right, and there was 3 hairs an inch long growing out of my ear. I plucked those babies, and I'm thinking, oh, good night. I know they didn't grow last night. So they've been waving around, and I got to thinking about this. I owe some of you old guys an apology. Because I was thinking you no longer cared about your appearance. You just can't see it. And I have a daughter that's a teenage daughter that doesn't need glasses. So I brought her in. I says, man, you got to start watching out for Mom and I. I mean, this is a tough time in our lives to get to this age. And I said, I told her what happened. And I says, can you just do a once over on me to see if I missed anything? That was a big mistake. Like 20 minutes later, now my daughter thinks she's a comedian. And she's pointing out all the things, hurting my feelings. I'm in therapy now twice a week because my daughter. And daughters, teenage daughters don't give a lot of compliments. I don't know if you have those, but they don't. So you better hang on to them when they give them to you. After one of the shows, she had some friends at one of the shows, and she came up afterwards and she says, Dad, we really enjoyed this. You did a great job. So I didn't believe her. I just opened up my phone and I looked up an Amazon cart to make sure she didn't fill it full of stuff. And I'm like, I just wanted to make sure it was empty. I said, did Mom promise you a pair of shoes? She said, no, we really enjoyed that. Oh, I should have dated it. I should have chiseled that one in rock. But you know what I stand up here insecure about? Is I was getting ready for a photo shoot, and I come out of the dressing room wearing the clothes that my wife and my daughter picked out for me, because I'm not the cool guy. They told me. So I come out and I said, hey, Sage, how does this look? And she says, it looks great, but you need to tape down your chest buttons. I'm like, good night. I'm not taping down nothing. She says they're sticking out. I know they're sticking out. But I'm not taping down my chest buttons. Yeah, and that's what's insecurity. Now I know where you guys' eyes are. My eyes are up here. Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah. But that's what they do. And I use the word chest buttons because I didn't want to use the words that my potty mouth little teenage daughter used that apparently she learned in anatomy class in high school. Thought that was appropriate. I'm like, Sage, good night. And some of the reasons that I try to keep it clean and I try to do this is because when I was a teenager, my parents bought me a hoodie with our last name on it, Sheehan. And only because we're doing this today and I have a lot of family here and I've got an older sister that's kind of the mean one, she doesn't, she doesn't like when people say Sheehan. Well, it's spelt Sheehan, so I just like to say that it's Sheehan just because it bugs her. Sheehan. So this is, you're getting just a little extra special today because the hoodie had Sheehan on the back. My sister goes, it's not Sheehan, it's Sheehan. I said, you've been married with a different last name for 30 years. You can't be offended. That really gets her. She says she'll throat chop me. And I'm telling you, if you don't think you'll meet her maybe afterwards, and if you don't think she's that mean, yesterday we were driving in the car, my dad called her a princess. She says, call me a princess again, I'll punch your lights out. Well, so that's why I had chest buttons, because they said, you need to wear this hoodie, that last name will follow you everywhere. You got to really respect that. I'm thinking, good night, you don't tell a teenage kid that, for crying out loud. I should have wore that hoodie inside out for like a decade, because I was in my prime for doing stupid stuff. But now I need my name on the front, my first name. I see some of you guys is with your badges on. Yeah, you guys have the same problem, huh? Okay. Trouble is I would have to have my wife find it for me if I came to this church. Then I'd be like, all right, it's getting bad. I've lost it. I was at Walmart the other day. I come out, and I lost my mind, and I lost my vehicle. I kid you not, I'm pushing the button, I'm wandering. Only thing that kind of comforted me is there was some other idiot in the parking lot because his truck was flashing too. So I kept walking by, just clicking, going, good. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to call my wife. And this isn't good because I don't want to give her the satisfaction to call me an idiot again. And then I realized that other idiot in the parking lot, that was me, because I'd bought a different truck. I wish I was lying to you about that, but it was true. I was pounding the pavement out there. I had a dark gray truck, now a white truck. It can throw a fella off. But I'm thankful that other people are like that. We've got some people back home that are my parents' age, and they ended up going to dinner to Old Chicago. Do you have Old Chicago here? Yes. They went to Old Chicago in 2 vehicles, and they came home in 1. They opened up their garage door, and somebody had stolen their high-dollar BMW. And they called the police, and they looked at all the camera footage, and they're like, I don't know how they did it, but we don't know how it was missing. Yeah, they blasted it all over Facebook. Yeah. 4 days later, they realized what they did, and they went and picked up their car in the parking lot at the Old Chicago. And I'm baffled a little bit because I'm thinking, we live in a town of 30,000. It's a $100,000 car that was reported stolen, and it sat in the parking lot at Old Chicago for 4 days. But I'm thankful for that. I've been married for 29 years. Oh, it's not all that good for her. I mean, there's been some tough times. Have you ever been sitting there on a Saturday watching TV and you heard the phone ring and your wife answers it and says, oh, we would love to see you. See you in about an hour? That will ruin a weekend. Well, and have you ever joined a conversation that you didn't know you were part of? So I'm sitting there watching TV. We'd been married a couple years. I was dumb and young, right? And so my wife is staring me down, cleaning the house up, picking it up, looking at me. Finally, she goes, are you just going to sit there? I didn't even know that I wasn't supposed to sit here. But now that I'm older and a lot more mature, I'm older. Now I just, when I hear those dreaded words, we would love to see you, I go out into the garage, I grab my tool belt, I come in, I relay some linoleum, I do some touch-up painting, recalk the tub, change those light bulbs that she's been mentioning a few hundred times. My wife has answered the door the same way our entire marriage. Come on in, please excuse the mess. I don't let her get away with it. I don't. I'm just like, the mess, this is the cleanest this house has been since the last time we had people over. And I'm a little irked, to be honest with you, because I just finished 6 months worth of honeydews in the last 45 minutes and like no credit. Yeah, laugh it up. We went to 2 years of therapy. I'm a happy guy now. Yeah. So one night my wife and I were rolling around in bed and, oh crap. G-rated, get your mind out of the gutter. I messed that one up. I don't know if I'm going to recover from this one. Hey, she's like, oh, good night. Yeah. One night my wife was asleep and I was rolling around in bed, you perverts. And I ended up face to face with my wife, and I smelled something. And it was like morning breath, but like worse. And I'm thinking, good night, what did you eat? And then I'm thinking, well, I ate the same thing. So I did the old check. It was her. And I know that my wife would not appreciate her breath smelling like that. And being the loving and caring husband that I am, her mouth was open up just far enough to sneak in a Tic Tac. I know all you ladies are going, that is a lucky, lucky woman. Well, she wasn't asleep near as much as I thought she was. And she woke up on the fight. And her language wasn't rated R, but I'm pretty sure that if I had the lights on, her looks would have been. Has anybody ever bought something without permission? There you go. And I know some of you guys are like, you did, you little liar. Well, one time I showed up to the house with a Mustang 5.0. I mean, it was the car that I wanted in high school, and I could finally do it. And she come out, and she wasn't as enthusiastic. She didn't appreciate it, none. And I tried to convince her that I had some old cassette tapes with some of my sermons and some of my comedy shows on them, and we no longer had a cassette tape player. The Mustang has a cassette tape player, and I can listen to some of my old stuff. I know. And then, yeah, I know, it's lucky. And then, how many people have a dog? Man, I am not an animal lover. I'm just letting you know. So we have a dog and a cat, but they're my wife's dog. And have you ever tried to convince your wife that you and her dog, the dog that she is so excited, gets on, just, oh, that love just comes, it's unconditional love. She talks to the dog. She leaves the room, she comes back, the dog's as excited as she is. That dog and you've been talking, and that dog would like a nicer boat to ride around on this summer at the lake. Only one? Man, I'm making you fellas look a lot better tonight, aren't I? You're welcome. Well, I can tell you, I've heard it 1,000 times that it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is permission, and you guys are a bunch of liars. She'll forgive me, but I can tell you, I can always tell when it's forced. Yeah? Like, are you still mad about that Mustang? No, I'm not mad about that Mustang. Well, you should tell your face. And that's not the right thing to tell her either. And I'm turning into my parents. How many of you turned into your parents? And you swore you were never going to be that way. So I'm holding off. I just turned 50, but I noticed something when I was barbering. I barbered for about 12 years, and I noticed that there's an age that all of you guys get to that you start doing simple math for everybody around you. I'm 67. Next year, I'll be 68. Pay attention, every one of you do it. I'm telling you right now, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And then you're like you 7-year-olds. How old are you? I'm 7 3/4. Really? Well, when's your birthday? 9 months from now. That math doesn't add up in case you're trying to figure that out. But yeah, I'm 92. Next year I'll be 93. No kidding. Oh, way to go. You want to just pat them on the head and say, man. But I'm holding off. I'm not telling you what I am next year. I'm not going to do it. My grandparents, they had a different relationship. My grandpa, when he retired, he went to work just like he was working. He had a shop, and he would go down after he retired early in the morning. He would tinker. So he would be rebuilding Model Ts, Model As, trailers, whatever, and come home for lunch. Well, one day I was able to go and hang out with him, and we'd been married a couple years, and we go down to work early. We work lunchtime. We clean up. We come to the house. This isn't quite where it gets different, but relationships for some of you guys are different. And I'm going to point this out to you. So we get to the house, we sit down, and there is a table full. It's like a feast for lunch. We called it lunch. They call it dinner and supper. It was always confusing as a kid. But so we get there at lunch, and old people don't throw anything away. So you have like 2 bites of mashed potatoes. You got 3 kernels of corn on a spoon, just for a little shooter. And then whatever else Grandma had made that day. And this is where it gets different. We sat down, and we no longer sat down, and my grandpa says, I need my pills. There was no throat punching. There wasn't a sigh. There was an evil eye. My grandma, with joy in her heart, stood up, walked around the table, grabbed his pills that were sitting right next to him, got them out, handed them to him, and said, do you need anything else? That's different. And he knew what he had, because when Grandma was making her way back around the table, he looked at me and he winked and he said, try that at home. Zero chance that I would be standing up here before you if I tried that at home. And my wife she's not like my older sister. We actually had some friends that are back here that are neighborhood friends, and one of them says, I'm going to heckle you this morning at there. And my sister says, you do that, I'll punch you in the face. That's what my sister said to her. And I said, well, we'll see how well you'll be able to keep your mouth shut when I'm speaking tonight. She doesn't know all this stuff was coming. My wife's starting to go through that change. And that midlife change, and I'm just telling you, what that really means is don't ever touch me again. And I don't think we're going to agree on a comfortable temperature ever again in our lives. And it used to be, not that I haven't changed. I changed. I used to always be the hot one, and I'd have the house too cold, and I'd say, put on a blanket or whatever. And now I'm always cold. But she can't make up her mind. Yeah, she's like going through that change. And our office manager's going through the change too. So I tried to sneak out of work as much as possible. My wife, I can be sitting there watching TV, and she's like, oh, I'm so hot. So I get up, turn on the fan, open the door. I no longer get the door open. She says, I'm freezing to death. Will you close that door, shut off the fan, grab me a blanket? Don't you even care about me? We were on a trip the other day, and she is turning the heated seat up, cranking it to 90. Cooled seat, cranking it to 60. Back and forth like every mile marker. I feel horrible. That is a horrible thing. And so when I was working up this little story to tell you, because that stuff's all true, but I wanted to do a twist and say, man, I think there should be like some kind of a support group for that. For us guys, I mean. We're in the house of the Lord, ladies. Calm down. But as I said this, my mean older sister, she says, I hope there is a support group for you guys, because you guys are going to need it to go through the therapy it's going to take after I knock you out. That's right. I've never understood grumpy people. I'm sorry if you're one of those. If you've still sitting there like that, I'm telling you, I don't understand it. I had this guy named John. There's a lot of Johns here. Do you notice that? Yeah. This is 3rd John. John told me today, John, 1 John, 2 John, and then they reverse. Now it's 1 John, 2. So 3rd John. 3rd John came to the barbershop. Been coming for years. He's a sweet old man. He come in there, and this day he is aging. He's in his 80s, and he walked up with the walker to the front door. He had his oxygen on the back and a hose in his nose, and he comes in. Well, his wife had to drive him that day because his health was failing. And she walked in, and I had about 10 people waiting in front of him, and she had a fit. She was grumpy. She started going, are you kidding me? Are all you guys here for a haircut? And I wanted to say, no, Columbo, they're here to buy movie tickets, but I didn't. Because that's not the right thing to say. And so she ended up, she just go, and those guys said, yeah, she said, we're not waiting, John. I'll make an appointment at my beauty shop, and we're not waiting. And I don't know if John was he surrounded with men, so he's like, I'm staying. And he did. He says, Chad's cut my hair for a long time. He's cutting my hair today. Well, they sat down. There was only 2 seats left, and John sat next to me and then his wife. And she complained the entire time. I mean, I was like, good night, man. So finally I was like giving her the out, like, I know you don't live that far from here. If you want to, I can call you when John's done. I said, I'll close the shop down and bring him home for you if you want. Have you ever noticed that grumpy people like to be grumpy? Yeah, so she sat there the whole time complaining. So I'm cutting his head, and I see something out of the corner of my eye. And it's John trying to get my attention. I look over. Now, he's not wanting to get his wife's attention. And so he's looking at her, looking at me. I was wondering, has John been putting up with this for over 60 years? Or is she just in a bad mood because his health is declining? I found my answer out when he looks at me and he starts acting like he's tying knots in his oxygen hose. 60 years that lucky man's been married. That's one of those better or worse stories. You know, that's what you committed to. Well, that's great. But I can't stand grumpy people. When I was younger and my truck wouldn't start and every time. And so I knew the battery's getting weak, but it was back before cell phones. And so I was thinking, man, I can't just call my dad. And I'm not a mechanic, promise. My wife will contest that. But so I go into this auto parts store. And you remember when the old catalog was chained to the shelf? And you'd look up what battery you needed, and the chain was always too short, you know. So you would look it up, and you'd be like, okay, those two, and then you'd have to kind of do one of these things. Well, there was 2 batteries that it recommended. One of them was half the size of the other. But I'm an idiot kid. I'm going, that doesn't even make sense to me, but that's what it says. Now that I'm older, I realized it was in the wrong space. But back then, I was more fit. And so I grabbed both those batteries and I brought them up to the counter, sat them down there. There was an old guy behind the counter looking up parts in the store. And I was thinking about this the other day. I bet that guy was my age. But this old guy was there, and I'm like, can you, I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. And can you, and I told him the whole story. I've looked it up like 5 times, and these are the 2 batteries. Can you explain to me why there's 2 different sizes and why the smaller one is twice as much as the big one? This guy says, I don't know, I'll play your silly little game. Why is it? I wanted to throat punch that guy, but I didn't. And I started to leave. And I'm like, because I was offended easily back then. And I was like, man, I'm not putting up this. That old guy says, hey, you need to put these batteries back. I'm like, I'm going to shove those batteries right. Okay. And I say, God made me a little different. And I was like 2 blocks away. Luckily, my truck started. And I'm 2 blocks away, and I get to thinking, you'll think I'll play your silly little game. And I thought, that is the best thing I've ever heard in my life. I could have used it my whole life. Hey, Chad, why are you running in the hallway? I don't know. I'll play your silly little game. Why am I? Chad, why'd you hit your buddy in the eye with a spitball? I don't know. I'll play your silly little... It is brilliant. I was thinking, man, my wife, you know, when she thought I would have some kind of a fashion sense, and she'd say, are you really wearing that tonight? I don't know, I'll play your silly little game. I mean, it works for everything. I went back and thanked the guy. I did. I walked in, I said, I know you were meant to be a jerk, but I'm telling you, that's one of the funniest. I'm going to get some miles out of that. I was walking out, he says, you need to put these batteries back. Hey, guess who's not going to? I'll play your silly little game. I was driving down a road one time, and it was right after an ice storm in Casper, Wyoming, and I'm paying attention because they're building this building, and you know how they'll tarp them and then they'll still lay block, and it's the middle of winter, and I'm just in awe of this building going up, and I look up and the light is red. And there's no way I'm getting her shut down without going sideways. So I rolled through it right in front of a police officer that thankfully was holding back on his green light. Well, he lights me up, gets behind me, and this guy must have been having a day. Because he gets out, he's got his mirrored sunglasses on, he's tapping his gun like he's going to shoot the guy that just ran the stoplight in front of him. And he comes up, I roll down my window, he starts reading me the riot act. I mean, he's going on. And he's, is there any reason you ran that stoplight? I don't know, I'll play your silly little game, is there? You don't do that to a police officer. That's the wrong thing to say. Have you ever tried to tell them that you're just joking as they're putting handcuffs on? They don't just let you go. That was the day that I found out that the food in jail really wasn't that bad. And that's a story that I told, that my mom said, so you went to jail. So I changed it. And so I said, well, I really don't know what the food in jail tastes like, but my brother does. I thought it was funny because it's truth, Mom. Now I'm not lying. And then she was at a show and she heard that. She didn't like that. I go, Mom, that stuff's funny. I said, it's funnier that way. Actually, it was a barbershop buddy. I'd done a ton of ride-alongs with him. Man, he come bebopping up there. He's like, hey, Chad. I said, I was looking. If you need to write me a ticket, I was looking at that building. He goes, oh, no. But he says, be careful out there. We've done accident after accident, and there's a bunch of idiots on the road. I said, I ran the stoplight. And he said, fair enough. And he gets in his car. I like my story better. Mom. So I hope you guys are having fun tonight. Are you guys having fun? So this all started back when in 2005 when Hurricane Katrina happened. And so a guy at the barbershop was, he was from the North, because they don't say North Carolina Baptist Men. And he was at the barbershop, and he says, in Casper, Wyoming, he says, hey, after that hurricane, he says, are we going to go down there? And I said, yeah, I'll go down whenever. I said, when are you leaving? He said, tomorrow. I'm like, I better tell my wife. So we go down there, and it was one of the best trips I've ever been on. You saw humanity come together. And it was amazing. You know, everybody talks about, they always find that idiot that's wanting to complain about everything. You know, FEMA didn't help me out. We didn't run into any of that. Man, they were just humanity at its best. I mean, hey, thank you for this. They're living in park or, you know, with their kids underneath a tarp, and they're thankful. But as we were there, we went into the sticks into Gulfport, Mississippi. We had a trailer. We had some knowledge. So we were rebuilding this couple's roof that a big oak tree had fallen on. And we were doing that. And this guy, I mean, we're talking backwoods. I got my own sawmill 30 years ago. No teeth, banjo playing. I'm telling you, it was like, woo! And so he had a donkey, and his name was Jeremiah, and he was talking donkey. He'd say, Jeremiah, boy, and that donkey would start braying. I'm like, can I talk to your donkey? And I tried it, and he was a one-man donkey. He wouldn't talk to me. But that night, every night, we would come back to a church, and we would do a devotion time. And, man, there were heavy stories. Everybody was a heavy story, right? And I'm just not built like that, man. I think, and not that there's not a time for that, but God created me different. I'm like, man, we gotta raise this up a little bit, because everybody, I told this guy, I said, David, I can't come to the Bible study or the devotion anymore. He says, why? I said, this is heavy. Look at everybody. They're all crashing out because, will you pray for this guy? He lost his wheelchair. This lady was abused and she left her. I mean, it was horrible stories, right? But man, there was no victory in it. And so he says, well, get up there and speak to him. And I'm like, I don't do that. I entertain at the barbershop, because who wants to wait for 3 hours for a bad haircut? right? So I'd entertain them. So he said, get up there and tell them the stories that you tell me. So that's kind of where it started. And then people were coming up to me and saying, hey, would you come to our church? I'm like, I don't do this. So I sold the barbershop, and that's how it all started. But I always, like I told some of you guys this morning, I always want to use my gifts to glorify God. You know, that whole thing on gain the world but lose your soul, vanity stuff. You know, it would be great if life was like a comedy show, right? Where you could leave here and you're like, man, you could just go to the next comedy show and you could just laugh and boy, everything would be great. But that's not life. And so there's going to be some of you guys that leave and you're going to be in a real dark spot in your life and you're going to be in one of those valleys. And I just want to share a story that happened to me. It's a video that our church did. It's 11 minutes, but it was one of the darkest moments of my life. And you guys were here this morning, so it was about being arm robbed in my barbershop. So 3 people came in with guns and masks. There was a 4th person, but just it was hard. And I'm telling you, I've always been that upper guy, right? I'm always the guy like, let's talk about Jeremiah, you know, during Hurricane Katrina. But there was just this, I couldn't shake it. And yet God graciously just walked me through it. And then, like I said this morning, 2 of them were a brother and sister, and they both come to know the Lord. So we're going to watch this video, but I just want to warn you, I have fluctuated my weight like 60, 70 pounds, like 6 or 7 times in my life. I'm an all or nothing kind of guy, you know? And it has nothing to do with exercise. It has to do with ice cream. And so when you watch this video, don't be alarmed because that Chad looks like it ate this Chad. But I don't want that to distract you from the story. So if we can play that.
Hi, my name is Charlie Garrison, and this is part of my story about meeting probably one of the bravest men I've ever met.
Hello, I'm Chad Sheehan, and I'm here to tell a story about an event that happened in my life that has changed me forever. Years ago in a barbershop, I was sitting on the phone in between customers, and next thing I know, some people came rushing in, put a gun to my head and said, put the phone down. I instantly opened my cash drawer and just wanted to not get shot.
The story started long before the day that the incident happened. There was several people that my sister was involved with. They were talking about some things, possibly robbing somebody. And my sister called and she told me, she didn't call, she came over. And she told me that she didn't know if she trusted these guys and asked if I would go with them. Of course, I agreed. They came by my work and they said, hey, let's go. And I jumped in the vehicle and I just wasn't strong enough. I don't remember a lot about the day. I can't remember if he was on the phone. I don't remember him opening the cash drawer. I remember he was on the floor and I had the gun pointed at him. And I saw his eyes. It wasn't even fear, it was just betrayal. I knew at that instance I would never be the same.
I was really struggling, and my struggle was just they diagnosed me with a post-traumatic stress disorder, and they had me on some medications, and I was just jumpy, and it was different than I'd ever been. I didn't ever want to be one of those guys that lived in the yellow and was always ready for a battle, and I was angry and I was hurt and I wanted to get even, and I started to have thoughts like, man, I wonder if any of these cops that were friends of mine would catch these guys and let me do justice in my own mind and kill them. And I lived with this sin in my life that I hated. And I went from that to getting on my knees, getting in the Word, and saying, Lord, I need forgiveness for this. I can't keep going on living like this. I'm a sinner. I don't deserve to be forgiven, yet you've forgiven me. I need help forgiving these people.
After we got arrested, I made sure that I wasn't gonna try to fight it. I knew what I did. I deserved everything and more that they would give me. I talked to the police and I let them know just whatever you could do to get my sister out as soon as possible, just I'll take the blame for everything else. It didn't matter to me.
The probably the most repairing thing for me was the time that the sentencing happened, and it was like God knew what was going to happen, so He closed the big courtroom that day. That's what we were supposed to be in, and we ended up being in this tiny, like maybe 5 or 6 rows of pews, and they allowed me to speak to the court, and I remember telling them that I've been forgiven, that don't let this be a wasted time, just please change your life. Christ died for me, and I believe, and He died for you, and I just don't let this be wasted. Like 2-3 years later, we're at a Christian event where they're blowing up the hot water bottles and breaking bats, and there was a tough man competition or thing that then they were going to lead, say the gospel message at the end, and I look over during this intermission and I see who I've known to, her name was Crystal, and she was the sister of Charlie, and Dawn is my wife. I said, Dawn, I'm going to go talk to them and see if that's who it is and see how she's doing. Went over there, and Crystal she had really, really long hair. She was a short girl, had a big smile on her face. I says, are you Crystal? And she says, yes. I said, do you know who I am? And she had a big smile on it. And she says, no. I said, I'm Chad the barber. And she instantly changed and says, I am so sorry. And I said, I promise you, there is nothing here. I just want to know if you've changed your life. And she talked to me about her faith, talked to me how she accepted Christ. Months after that, I get a phone call. I was still doing barbering and comedy at the time, and I get a call. Is this Chad the barber? I said, yeah. This is Crystal's mom. They found a tumor in her brain, and they have to shave her head to do the surgery, and she has said that she's not going to do that unless you come and cut her hair. So I went up there and shaved her hair, and we cried together, and we prayed together. It was truly a moment I'll never forget of how cool it was that this girl that had done something like that, which I also look at sin as sin, because I believe God says sin is sin. So if you've lusted in your heart, you've committed adultery. If you've hated in your heart, you've committed murder. So I believe that she was no different than I am. And to see her life changed was awesome. So we cried and prayed. Well, Crystal ended up passing away from that at 23 years old. So then fast forward, Facebook comes out, cell phones, all this stuff. And I'm thinking, I wonder how her brother Charlie's doing. So one night I started searching, and I found who I thought might be her brother, and I reached out and said, hi, this is Chad. I believe we first met in the barbershop, and he responded, there again, sorry, and his life was changed. He was now a Christian. He was a great husband, or he is a great husband. He's a father, of 2 kids. He was telling me how he was doing some prayers in church and really involved. And so we wrote back and forth, said how we have to meet up.
Probably one of the hardest things in my life that I've ever done is respond to the text or to that instant message that Chad sent me. I had no idea what to say or how to say it. It was my wife that said, let's pray about it. And that's where I got the words to tell him I'm sorry and explain that through all of this, I've chosen to follow Christ. I've chosen to help with the offering, meditations, and such in our church. I've chosen not to just believe in him, but to take that step.
It's quite a bit of time passed between then and when we could meet up, and we stayed in touch a little bit. And one day I was going to be in Casper and said, hey, can we have lunch? And so we sat down for lunch, and I got to meet a guy that brought joy to my life through his redemption story. I got to meet a guy that truly loved the Lord, that was truly changed. So this time in this stuff, my only hope in this, that it wasn't wasted, came to reality. And that happened because I wanted to be obedient and faithful to a God that forgave me. And so in that, that's what God calls us to do. He's called us to do this. And the freedom that I had found through that has built an unbelievable story that I hope shines light on what Christ can do in a person's life. Because I went from honestly wondering if I could shoot these people and kill them to becoming friends with them, praying with them, and knowing without a doubt that God has a plan in this, and someday we are going to spend eternity isn't in the presence of our Creator. Getting to know Charlie and then just to having him bring that joy to my life and seeing this redeemed man was something that I came home and I told Don, I said, man, I want him to work with us. I mean, man, how cool would that be that we can work together and because I truly feel that our business is a ministry, and man, to get that out there.
This actually came at a great time in my life. I had worked road construction for so many years, and being a Christian in road construction is not easy. For 8.5 years, just being belittled and mocked and hearing all the vulgar language and the way people talk and such, and then him offering me a job with him. Even when he offered it, I still couldn't accept it at the time. But it was just another thing that Jesus did for me to help me on my walk.
But it wasn't easy. It's just like, some of this stuff, it takes daily, it talks about picking up your cross daily, and I don't know that non-Christians or many Christians understand that that's denying yourself every single day. That's like when Satan throws those things at us, that we're able to say, no, you know what? I am free in Christ. I am forgiven. And I'm not going to live in this until it becomes habit, I guess.
Praise God, huh? Yeah, so that's my story. That's what I'm thankful. So when you're going through those valleys, know that's, it's kind of a cheesy saying, but that's when you look up. We hate going through these trials, and then there's people that have done some horrible things that think that they're beyond what God can do, and you're not. It's never too late. And so just praise God. Thank you guys for coming out. We're going to put a QR code on the screen. It's for a private Facebook group if you are into Facebook, but it's something that I've been working on, a Life with Laughter like 30-day challenge. It's going to be free. I mean, it's just a thing that I'm trying to walk through and give you guys some more just steps of becoming a Jesus follower. And so that QR code is up there. And then also back on this table, as you guys are leaving, there is a card, my card. It has this QR code on it, but then it also has the Charlie story, so you can always link onto that, and it goes to my my YouTube channel. So then you can do that and share that with people that need it. You know, I know you guys are snowbirds, but you know, this is what I do. So if it's something when you guys go back home and you have a church there that is that this would be a fit in, you know, let them know. But I really do appreciate it, you guys. I love you, and I hope you guys have a good night.